Hi, this session is on finding the circumference. So using our knowledge of circles and pi to calculate the circumference of circles and other shapes. Now before we start these questions, it's important that you understand what circumference is and of course the diameter and radius. So please write these down if you have missed out on a previous lesson. So circumference, just to recap, is the perimeter around a circle. Every circle has a center point. A line that passes through the center point and touches one end of the circle, so from here to here, touches both ends, is called the diameter. The diameter is the longest line we can draw inside a circle. Radius is half the diameter. Okay, so going from the center point to one point of the circle is the radius. Radius can go in any direction, so can the diameter, can go in any direction. There's an infinite amount of those as well. So please write these notes down if you haven't got them already. We have also looked at what pi is. So pi is an irrational number which goes on forever and has no recurring pattern. And it can't be written as a fraction. We use the Greek letter pi, so the Greek alphabet. We use this symbol that represents this long number. So here is a sample of pi. It always starts with 3 and it goes on forever. Now, you can do an activity to work out how we actually get pi, how we get this 3 and these decimal numbers. There's a relationship between the circumference and diameter of a circle. So you can try this yourself, and you can do it with any object, any circle, you'll get similar results. So basically, pi is the circumference divided by the diameter. And it says that with any circle, 3 diameters can fit onto its own circumference with a little bit left over, which is why we have that decimal. You can also watch this lesson on Math Antics on YouTube. So type in this topic or the URL and it will take you to a great lesson that shows you how we get pi if you're still not sure or you've missed out on some lessons. Okay, so question 1. Finding the circumference using the diameter. So find the circumference of the following circles and it asks us to use the diameter. Use a calculator for the value of pi. Round your answer to 2 decimal places. Okay, so please make sure you try the questions yourself first and always draw the diagrams. They don't have to be perfect. My circles aren't perfect, but as long as you can see the question you're answering. Now, when it comes to the circumference of circles, there are 2 formulas we can use. So we can have circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, so d, and circumference can equal to 2 pi r. Okay, these were on the notes on the first slide I showed you before. So this question specifically asks us to use the diameter. So find a circumference using the diameter. So make sure we use the diameter. We can use a calculator to find the value of pi, and we're going to round off to 2 decimal places. So keep all of this in mind. So first one, always do this before you even start because you can easily make a mistake, especially with B. So for this one, 24 is my diameter. The line goes all the way across, so diameter is equal to 24 centimeters. Just write 24, that's fine. Radius would be half of that. So 24 divided by 2 would give me 12. Just so I can see clearly what is D and what is R. So now, because the question says use the diameter, I'm going to use this formula here. If they didn't specify, you could use either one. So write the formula first as part of our working out. Circumference is equal to pi times d. So always show this formula in your working out or any formula you use. Circumference is equal to pi times, I know my diameter is 24, pi times 24. Now I'm using a calculator. So on your calculator you go pi times 24 equals, and we've got 75.39822237, and the calculator's stopped here and rounded it off. So we can copy this down. Now I forgot to mention, if your calculator shows different digits at the end, it might show some more, it might show less, that's okay. It's still the same number. It just depends on what type of calculator you have and how many numbers can fit on its screen. Okay, so this is what I've got. So my final answer I have to round off, so I can say it's approximately now, because I'm rounding off, my number's not going to be exact. Approximately 75. Now to 2 decimal places, just like if you don't know how to round off, there's a lesson you need to watch. So 2 decimal places, 1, 2. So the rest of this can go except I've got to add a 1 to that 9 because 8 is a larger number, 5 or more. So 9 plus 1 is 10. So I'll just do some working out for this one. So put the 0 down, carry the 1. 3 plus 4 plus 1 is 4. And there's my decimal point. So I'd have 0.40. Now don't forget to use our units. It's a length, so we just write centimeters. So we can start writing the approximately symbol because we are rounding off. And that's our answer. Now with B, I can see we are given the radius. We've got half a line. It doesn't go all the way. And that's the radius. So straight away I'm going to say R is 0.4. I don't have the diameter, and I need to know the diameter because the question says use the diameter. So use this formula. Alright, so D would be double that. So you can just go 0.4 plus 0.4, or we can go 0.4 plus 2. That gives us 0.8. So we're just doubling it. So if I continued my line, I'd have another 0.4 here. So this whole line would be 0.8. That's our diameter. Okay, so now that I know what D is, circumference will be equal to pi times 0.8. So pi times 0.8. Oops. And I get this decimal. Okay, and I have to now round off my circumference to the second decimal place. So my number will look something like this. But just check, after the 1 I've got a 3. Because it's 4 or less, my number stays the same. So 2.51. I don't add a 1 to that one. And our units are meters. Don't forget to write your units. Okay, for our next question, it says find the circumference of the following circles using the radius. Okay, so instead of using that formula, circumference equals pi times z, we're going to use the other one, 2 pi r. And we're doing the same thing. Use a calculator for the value of pi. Round your answer to 2 decimal places. Okay. Now hopefully your circles look better than mine. Okay, so for the first one, we've got the radius. We can see half a line. So I'm going to write radius is equal to 5. Okay. And because I need to work with the radius, I don't need to write the diameter. So that's the formula we're using because the question said use the radius. So 2 pi r. Now remember, just in case you've forgotten, if I pop this off for a sec, if I've got this, these are my 2 formulas. They are the exact same thing. That 2 there is there because we are doubling the radius. 2 times r gives me my diameter. So that's why these 2 formulas are the same thing. We have 2 formulas because sometimes we work with the radius, other times with the diameter. So just keep that in mind. So circumference is equal to 2. Now there's an invisible times in between everything. So 2 times pi times the radius, which is 5. I rubbed it off, so I put it back. Okay. Now you can put this straight into your calculator, or we can use our algebra skills to simplify this. Well, I know 2 times 5 is 10 times pi. So if I didn't have a calculator, I can just write this, 10 times pi. But we can get a number. So let's use our calculator. Okay, so 10 times pi, there's my number. Okay, just wrote that down. Now once again, we are rounding off to 2 decimal places, so approximately equal to 2 decimal places. My number will look something like this. Before I just copy that down, let's check. Number after 1 is 5. Because it's 5 or above, so it's a 5, I have to add a 1 to the 1. So 1 plus 1 is 2. So I'll have 31.42. Don't forget our units, meters. Okay, for our next question, we can see we are given the diameter. So straight away I'm going to write D is equal to 34 because I can see that. So half of 34 is what I need. Whoop. I only want half of my diameter. I want the radius because I'm using this formula because the question told me to. So radius is half of 34, which is, if I go 34 divided by 2, I get 17. That's how we halve something. So once again, let's write the formula. Circumference is equal to 2 pi r, which is 2 times pi times r. Circumference is equal to, now r is 17, so 2 times pi times 17. Now, if I simplify this like I did over here, you can see we go back to the diameter. 2 times 17, or double 17, is 34. And we end up with 34 times pi, or 34 pi. Okay? Now, put this into our calculator. So 34 times pi equals, copy this down. We can also see we don't have as many decimal places because we've got 106. Our whole number's larger. So the calculator can't fit too many more decimal places. Okay, and to round this off to 2 decimal places, my number will look something like this. Okay, let's check number after 1 is 4. So because it's 4 or less, the 1 stays the same. I'll just leave it. So 106.81 meters, don't forget the units, is our approximate answer. So the perimeter of this circle, the circumference, the length is 106.81 meters approximately. Okay, for our next question, question 3, it says finding the circumference using approximations of pi. So approximations means an estimate, not exactly pi. So we won't be using that pi button on our calculator. Okay, that gives us a more accurate answer. We'll be using approximations. So for A, it says calculate the circumference where pi is approximately 3.14. So this just has 2 decimal places of pi. B says calculate the circumference where pi is approximately 22 divided by 7. Now 22 divided by 7 is a fraction that gives you a number that's close to pi. If I go to my calculator and I just go 22 divided by 7, we know the fraction line means division. I've got 3.14, so it's getting close to pi, then it's 28571 and then 4 again. So this decimal will start seeing the same numbers appear, 4, 2, 8, 5, 7. It goes on forever, but there's a pattern. That's why it's not pi, but it's close to pi. Now, just in case you're not sure, we use approximations of pi because pi is an irrational number. Okay, the more digits of pi that we have, the more decimal places we use, the more accurate our answer is. So before the use of calculators, the fraction 22 divided by 7 was commonly used as a good simple approximation to pi. So imagine having no calculators, we've got to try something else. Other options are rounding off to the second decimal place, like we have in the question, 3.14, or the third decimal place, 3.142. So it's common to see these numbers, 22 over 7, or these two rounded off in some questions. So have a go with this first. Now I just want to point out this question hasn't asked us to round off to a certain decimal place, and because we're using approximations of pi, we hopefully won't have to round off. We'll have a finite decimal, a decimal that ends, so keep that in mind, and make sure we use the approximations they ask for. So with the first one, remember we've got our 2 formulas. We can use either one. So circumference is equal to pi times d if I've got the diameter, or 2 pi r if I have the radius. If you like to stick with one all the time, you can do that. You might notice this one is more commonly used than pi times d, and we also see something similar in area of a circle, which is probably why. But either one is fine. The question doesn't specify. So with this one, straight away I've got the radius. So I'm going to write r is equal to 3 centimeters. I'll just write 3. Now the question said for this one, pi, they want you to use 3.14. So we're not going to use the calculator, pi button. We're going to just use 3.14. So I'll write that down. So pi now is going to be written as 3.14 in my working out. Okay, I'm not going to write the diameter because I'm going to use this formula. Circumference is equal to 2 pi r because I've got the radius already. So let's replace or substitute what the values for pi and r that we're using. So circumference is equal to 2 times, so no pi button now, we're going to use 3.14 times the radius, which is 3. Now at this point, I can just go, okay, just to simplify this, 2 times 3 is 6, so I've got 6 times 3.14. Now I'm multiplying with a decimal. Yes, you can put this into your calculator, but imagine you had no calculator. It's important to know how to do this. If you have forgotten, I'll show you quickly. When multiplying with decimals, just ignore the decimal. So I've got, just say 314 314 times that 6. So once again, forget about the decimal. We'll put it in later. Now multiply this out. 6 times 4 is 24. Put the 4 down and add the 2. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 2 is 8. 6 times 3 is 24. So far I've got 2,484. Sorry, just made a mistake. That's why it's always important to check your work. 6 times 3 is not 24. 6 times 3 is 18. Sorry, I think I was thinking of a different question. Okay, so now that I've got my answer, which is supposed to be 1,884, now what we do with the decimal, to know where it goes, because remember we ignore the decimal, just count how many decimal places are there in the whole question. 6, there are no decimals, but here there are 2. 1, 2 decimal places. So that means right now my decimal is at the beginning of my number, just here. Take it back 2 times, 1, 2, and we end up with circumference is approximately 18.84 centimeters. Okay, so hopefully you know how to do this. If not, multiplying by decimals is pretty easy. Just keep practicing this. You can use a calculator to help you as well. So with our second one, let's just work out what we're working with. So we've got diameter 42. The line goes all the way across. So I'm going to say D is equal to 42. Make that nice and clear. Pi for this one, pi, they've asked us to use 22 divided by 7. Okay, so I'm going to replace pi with 22 divided by 7, or 22 over 7. Alright, so I'm going to use this formula. Circumference is equal to pi. Circumference is equal to pi times D, or pi D. Circumference is equal to, substitute pi for 22 divided by 7 times 42. Now that 42 is really sitting on a 1, so if it helps, you can just write it like that. Now these are just basic fraction skills. Simplify what you can before you multiply. So I can see if I divide 7 by 7, I get a 1. 42 divided by 7 is 6. So I'm left with 22 times 6. Because the 1's become invisible. Now 22 times 6, you can calculate with an algorithm, or it's 132. Don't forget our units, millimeters. And I'll just change that to approximately, because we know our final answer, we have approximated pi by using 22 over 7. So with these ones, I noticed, you probably noticed that the decimals either ended. This only had 2 decimal places, because we can see pi has been rounded off to 2 decimal places. And 22 divided by 7 is not irrational, and it helped us to calculate this with whole numbers. And the whole point of these questions is to calculate pi without a calculator, without using that pi button. Okay, question 4. Finding the perimeter of a semicircle. So now a semicircle is half of a circle. So we have 2 circles that have been cut in half. And the question says, using a calculator, find the perimeter of the following. Round your answers to 1 decimal place, not 2, 1. So see if you can have a go first. Okay, so when finding the perimeter of half a circle, let's just check and see what we have. We can see we've got half the circle here, so half the circumference, and then it's been cut in half, but I've got a line here. So the perimeter is going to be this curved part plus that line. So instead of writing C for circumference, let's just write perimeter. And always, when you've got questions like this, even composite shapes, just work out what are you going to be adding together. So I've got perimeter will be equal to half a circle, or we can write semicircle, plus, sorry, it's an L and an E, that line there. So plus the line. Okay, and that line is 25 centimeters long. So that's what we're going to be adding together. Now the line, to calculate the line, we don't need to. The line is 25 centimeters, so that's done for us. But I've got to calculate that semicircle, that half circle. And that's where our knowledge of pi comes in. So the formula of a full circle, we know, circumference of a full circle is either pi times d, when we've got the diameter, or we can have 2 pi r, when we have the radius. Now if I want to halve something, so remember when halving something, you either divide it by 2, so put a fraction line and divide it by 2. So make sure everything is on that fraction line, and we divide everything by 2. So we work out anything on top first and then divide it by 2, halve it. Another way of writing it is we can go circumference is equal to half of pi times d. Of in maths means times. Or here I can go circumference is half of, or of means times, 2 pi r. Okay, that's another way of approaching it. To halve something, you times it by a half or divide it by 2. And we're doing the same thing. Alright, so for this question, because I'm working with the diameter, I'm going to use pi times d. Okay, and my circumference now is going to be divided by 2. So my formula, I've had to add something to it, dividing by 2. So I'll just stick with this one. So now diameter is 25. And the question didn't specify, it just says to calculate it. Oh, sorry, it says using a calculator. So we're going to use the pi button on the calculator. So just double check that. So circumference is equal to pi times the diameter, which is 25, and divide that by 2. So let's get our calculator. So if I just go pi times 25, because we're multiplying and dividing, you can do it all at once, or just to get into the habit, pi times 25, I'll get the answer for that first, and then don't write this down, just do the next step, divide it by 2, and there I go. Sorry, I had to rewrite it because it came off. Alright, so that's what I calculated on my calculator. The question says round your answer to 1 decimal place, so let's do that. So now 1 decimal place, so rounding off, so approximately, is going to be, there's 1 decimal place. 2 is my first decimal place. So my number will look something like this. Before I just copy this down, check the number after 2, it's 6. Because it's 5 or more, I have to add a 1 to the 2. So round up 2. So 39 point, I round up 2 to 3. My units are centimeters. Okay, so what I have found is just to make sure we're clear, I have found the circumference of the semicircle, that curve there, half a circle. That's why I divided it by 2. Now, the perimeter, if you remember, was equal to the half a circle plus that line. So now I've got to just say, okay, perimeter is equal to, I've got the half circle, 39.3 centimeters, plus the line, which is 25 centimeters. So if I add that line, I get my whole perimeter. Perimeter is approximately equal to, so we add these together. So 39.3 plus 25, I get 64.3. So 64.3 centimeters. Okay, so we use the calculator for pi and to help us with the rest of it. So just remember, the perimeter of this semicircle involved 2 steps. First, calculating the half a circle, the circumference of half a circle. So same formula, just divide it by 2. Then adding that line here, which was 25. Okay, so now that we've done one example, please try this one yourself first. So we've got a semicircle again. So we're doing the exact same thing. Perimeter is equal to half a circle. If you want to draw a diagram, you can. Or just draw that circle part. Yeah. Plus that line, if that helps. Okay, so once again, let's focus on the circumference of that half a circle, the semicircle. So I'm going to just say, okay, circumference. So I'm going to work out this part here first. And I've got this circle. It's showing me from here to here, it's 16. That's the radius. The radius is 16. Okay, so that's nice and clear. So I'm going to use circumference is equal to 2 pi r. Now remember, that's for a whole circle. So half a circle, I have to divide that by 2. Okay, or times it by a half. So let's replace the r with 16. So circumference is equal to 2 times pi times 16. Divide that by 2. Now we can use a calculator for this question. So you can just put that all into your calculator. So 2 times pi times 16. I'll just push equals. That's my numerator, the top part. And then I'll divide it by 2. So there's my number. Okay, so I have found this part of my shape, okay, that curved part. I can round off at this point because the question asked me to round off to 1 decimal place. So once again, there's 1 decimal place. My number will be something like this, but check the number after 2 is 6. Add a 1 to the 2, so I have 50.3. Okay, and our units are millimeters. Okay, so the last thing I've got to do is now calculate the whole perimeter. So I'll just continue here, but usually try and fit it all sort of underneath each other. So perimeter is equal to, so I've got my half circle, which is 50.3. You can write millimeters or write it last, that's fine. Plus, now this whole line, what's the length of the line? Well, the whole line will be 16 plus another 16. So the diameter is the whole line. So 16 plus 16, so I get 32. Okay, so just remember that whole line was 16 plus 16. So always double check that as well. So perimeter is equal to, so 50, so that 0.3 will be in our answer. 50 plus 32, well 50 plus 30 is 80, so I have 82.3. Our units are millimeters. And that is the perimeter around this semicircle. Now, sometimes we can also have other fractions of a circle, not just half a circle. Here we can see we have a quarter of a circle. Okay, there's at 90 degrees telling me it's a quarter. A quarter of a circle, the mathematical term is a quadrant. So we have a quadrant. Over here, we've got 3/4 of a circle because one part is missing. So, and I can see 90 degrees. So I've got 1, 2, 3 parts and the 4th one is missing. Okay, so a circle can be cut up into 4 quarters at 90 degrees each. Now a full circle, a revolution has 360 degrees, something else we can note. So 4 of these, 90 times 4 gives us that 360. Now the question says find the perimeter for each of the following using a calculator. Okay, it doesn't say to round off to any specific decimal place, so we can round it off to what we want, but just use a calculator for pi as well. Okay, so the first thing we can do is understand that 8 centimeters, the center of the circle would be here. So just, I'm scared it's going to rub off again. So the center of the circle is just there, right at the corner. So if it helps to see the bigger picture of what I meant for quarter of a circle, if I just do dotted lines, there's my circle, and I've got 1 part out of 4 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's how we know it's a quarter. Okay, because that quarter we'll be using in a minute, so it's important to understand that. Okay, so the other thing I can see is this line here will also be 8 centimeters because that's also a radius. There's my center, so 8 centimeters and 8 centimeters. So if it helps, draw a full circle to see what we're working with. Alright, so the perimeter of this quadrant, this quarter of a circle, would be this line plus that curved part, the quarter of my circumference. So I can do it this way, quarter of C circumference plus the 2 lines. Okay, so plus 8 and plus 8. That's my perimeter of my shape. So the only thing I need to calculate is, okay, what is this length here, the quarter of my circle? Alright, so once again we are working with circumference. So that's for the whole perimeter. Well, it's just all gone now. So circumference is equal to, once again, we are working with radius, so I've got 2 pi r. Okay, now I don't want, this is for a full circle. I just want a quarter of it, the quarter, that part there. That's what I want. So to find the quarter of something, whenever we have a 1 on top and a number on the bottom, we're just dividing by that number. So I'm dividing by 4. Divide the whole circle by 4 and I get that part there. Another way of looking at it is, okay, circumference, a quarter of the whole circle, 2 pi r. And of in maths means times. So either one is correct. It's up to you which one you choose to use. So I'll just stick with the first one. So circumference is equal to, and the radius is 8. So 2 times pi times the 8. I'm dividing it by 4 because I just want that part there, not the full circle. Now we'll put this into our calculator, or if you want to, you can simplify. Because I'm multiplying everything on top, I can just go, okay, divide by 4 and divide by 4. That's a 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So I've got 2 times pi times 2. And then one more step. 2 times 2 is 4. And I end up with 4 times pi. But if you just wanted to put this straight into your calculator, what we had here, that's fine as well. So if I'll do it both ways. If I use the first one, 2 times pi times 8, and I'll just push equals and then divided that by 4. Whoops. Divide by 4. I get 12.566 and so on. But if I said, okay, 4 times pi, I get the exact same thing. So you can see how either one is correct. Okay, sorry, I had to rewrite it again. So circumference is approximately, now the question didn't say to round off. So if you left the decimal this long, that's fine as well. But I'm going to round it off to 2 decimal places. So I'll round it off to here. So the number after this 6 is 5 or more, so add a 1 to that 6. So I have 12.57. Okay, 8 centimeters. So my circumference, the quarter of a circle, this part here, is approximately 12.57 centimeters. So the whole perimeter, like we had before, is to get this, so 12.57 plus the 8 plus the 8, and that will give me the whole perimeter of that quarter of a circle. So perimeter is equal to, so we end up with 28.57 centimeters. Okay, and the last one for this session, we can see here we have 3/4 of a circle, or a quarter is being taken out. So just draw this. Okay, so once again, that 90 degrees is very important. It's telling us we're breaking up our circle into quarters. So there's our full circle. And if I just do these dotted lines, we can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 quadrants once again. Now one part is missing. So we have 1, 2, 3. So we have 3/4 of our circle. Okay, so we'll be using this to work out the 3/4 of our circumference, that part there. I don't have a full circle. You could also, for example, work out the quarter of a circle and subtract it as well if you want to do that, but I'm going to do it this way. So with this circle, the radius is 14, that line there, and that line there is also 14. They both reach that center point, so it's the radius. So radius is 14. Once again, before we even work it out, perimeter is going to be 3/4 of the circumference of C plus the 2 lines. So plus 2 lines, which are 14 and 14. So that's just an idea of what we're doing. All right, so first let's work out the circumference of this circle. So circumference is equal to, now remember, it's 3/4 and the formula I'm going to use is 2 pi r because I'm working with the radius. So we know the circumference of a full circle is 2 pi r, but I want 3/4 of that. Okay, so now let's sub in our values and replace of with time. So circumference is equal to 3/4 times, and I've got 2 times pi, I'm using pi in my calculator, times r, which is 14. Okay, now we can enter this all into our calculator. Now another way of writing this, so you can just, if you put this into a calculator, 3 divided by 4 times all that, that will work. But because we're multiplying by 3/4, if you wrote it like this, the 3 still on top, so 3 times 2 times pi times 14, and then divided all of that by 4, it's the same thing. See how we still got that 3 and the 4? The 4's on the bottom. Either way is correct. So if I just use the one I had initially, so 3 divided by 4, that's 3/4, times 2 times pi times 14. It leaves me with this. And if I enter the other one, the one that I simplified, we get the same thing. Okay, and now let's just round it off to 2 decimal places. You can leave the whole thing if you want to. So 65.97 is the 2 decimal places. Now remember, we have found this part here, 3/4 of the circumference. We found that, and don't forget to add the 2 lines. So finally, perimeter is equal to, I'll just do it up here because I can't fit it underneath, is equal to 65.97 plus 14 plus 14. So perimeter is equal to, so we should have 93.97. And don't forget our units in meters. Okay? So before we finish, if you found this answer by working out 1/4 of one circle and timesing it by 3, or that's correct as well. But just remember, whenever you see 90 degrees, it means we have quarters of a circle, and there are 4 quarters in one circle. Thank you.